my goodness, I'm so sorry. Hi everybody. My name is Wright. I am an author of a number of different gay books. The one I'll be reading from today is from my queer sci-fi series, The Galactic Captains, and book 5 of that series has just been released 13 days ago, 14 days ago, from 9 Star Press. It's called Altered Tides. But I'm actually going to read from the first book in the series. I'm just going to read from book 1, chapter 1, because last year at the Rainbow Space Magic convention, I read from book 5, Altered Tides, which is that reading is available online, and that book is now available. So I wanted to introduce people to the series and just let you know that the book is still available for 99 cents for a limited time. So I am going to read from Siege Weapons, it's called, The Galactic Captains, book 1. And I'll just read the blurb very briefly and then dive straight into the piece that I'll read. So Captain Alice is a lonely smuggler at the galaxy's outer verge and the last of his people. He's been trying to move on from a life of drugs and meaningless sex, but finding love in this forgotten corner of the galaxy is proving a bit difficult. When he's sent on a mysterious smuggling mission to a world under siege, he's enticed by promises of the domination he craves. But soon Alice finds himself entwined in a galactic power struggle that could cost him everything. This is Siege Weapons. Alone at the space station bar, I checked the screen on my wrist tech for the 100th time. The smooth, silvery metal, as thin and flexible as a flower petal, contoured perfectly to my bumps and scars. The device came alive, but still, no messages from him. He wasn't late anymore. He wasn't coming. I sighed and pushed away the plate of imported meat I'd picked through for the last 3 hours. I didn't even know why I'd wasted the money on it. When I'd arrived at Baldemar, this crummy little flank yard station orbiting a dead star, I'd been horny, not hungry. And as the hours went by, my anticipation had turned to anxiety, then nervousness, and finally a dejected state of knowing I'd been right all along. He never was going to come, and I was stuck footing the bill for an expensive dinner I didn't want in a shitty room I wouldn't sleep in. Plus, I was at least 8 hours away from where I needed to be. The bar curved around the space station's front edge, the long window displaying a view of a black, starless nothing. It was busy, but I happened to be the only Homo sapien here. Finding someone else to keep me occupied in this array of tentacles and translucent eyeballs was out of the question. Call me a racist, but I was only into humans. Besides, I doubted there would be any humans out here at all, let alone male ones interested in me. This was hetero-sapien space. They didn't like that term, but with the hundreds of thousands of sentient, spacefaring, non-human species in the galaxy, there was no way anyone could remember, let alone pronounce most of their native names. So, since forever they've been lumped together as hetero-sapiens, hetero meaning different as opposed to us Homo sapiens. The dark expanse of the outer verge was the most isolated and sparsely populated place in the galaxy. But to be sure, I checked my wrist tech again. No messages. I conducted a pointless scan of who might be around as a wrist tech searched for any Homo sapien male who registered at least a passing interest in the same sex. Alerts flashed and danced around the screen. The more annoying ones swerved around the screen to the back of my wrist before I could swipe them away. Free ship repairs with a room booking on Rastel Station. I saved that. My own one-person transport ship was older than me and held together with little more than hope. Mineral ore prices continued to plummet. That would hurt those bastards over at Galactic Shipping Co., my ex-employer. Trades Council rose against Jansen and Galenium mining dispute. Jansen was a planet at the edge of the verge, beyond the slipstream, and a place I couldn't even pretend to be interested in. There are no users matching your requirements on this station. Same as 5 minutes ago. I dragged my fingers across the screen and expanded the search. There are no users matching the requirements in this system. Shit. Not one dick in the whole damn system. I sighed again, harder, waving my wrist at the infraceptor for another drink of something strong and orange that burned my throat. I turned on my stool away from the crowd of ever rowdier heteros. I'd entertained their squealing for hours and was beyond sick of it. Eat enough of that stuff and you'll lose your hot body, mister. I immediately recognized the fake, sickly sweet voice of an AI. Rent a bot for one night and they'll follow you around forever. Heard that line before, I said without even turning. Well, with an ass like that, you can have anything you want. Feel like buying me a drink? It slid itself across the bar to get right in my face, flexing fake muscles under a poly casing and fluttering cheap plastic eyelids over its visual receptors. It disguised itself as a hot young blonde guy, pecs poking through a black mesh shirt, thick legs encased in tight shorts, showing off a butt big enough to dock a ship in. All this happened to be pretty much my type, well, conventional type at least. The other things I liked could only really be provided by a select few, with Uko being the only one in the whole damn outer verge I knew of right now. It'll fry your circuits, and buzz off before I shove an EMP up your ass. His elbow lifted off the bar with a faint electronic snap, and it slinked away. The bot scanned the rest of the place, no doubt after some leaky data to go code itself into the next unsuspecting soul's metallic fantasy. Although there's fat chance for this crowd of heteros. I didn't even want to imagine what sick sexual thoughts went through their mind. With a beep, a new message displayed on my wrist. Finally. Hey Alice, couldn't make it. Had to jump. Something came up. You know how it is. I should be on Target next week. Maybe we can get a room there instead. See you, Uko. I waved for another drink and slammed my fist on the bar. Why did I believe him? We'd met once, totally randomly, in a system I couldn't even remember. We'd fucked in the ship, a security patrol vessel. It had been everything I fantasized about, and the best thing to happen to me in a long, long time. I could get what I needed in any pleasure palace in any major world or even a decent-sized space station. But, like renting a bot, it only gave the illusion of gratification. Uko would give me what I wanted, what I craved. We'd met, chatted, he made me laugh, bought me a drink. His job made it more exciting, more dangerous. We've got to use your ship, not mine, he said, as he might be arrested. We've got to use your ship, not mine, I told him, as he might have arrested me if he'd seen what I had stored in my hold. Of course, I hadn't been joking. Uko worked in security, or what passed for it here in the outer verge, this loose band of a few hundred self-ruled systems occupying the spiral arm that juts out from the rest of the galaxy. We were too insignificant, too isolated to attract the machinations of galactic power. Out here, we operated under our own rules. Prospering meant being the smartest, the quickest, the strongest, and I was none of those. Across the vast distances of the outer verge, to venture beyond the atmosphere of your own world was to wrestle with smugglers, gangs, and astronomical phenomenon that wasn't found in any training manual or weather forecast. But this danger also gave rise to opportunity. No tolls, no tariffs, no taxes. Only Uko flying around collecting bribe money in between his busy schedule of fucking everyone that wasn't me, apparently. I downed my drink, not caring about its cost anymore. As soon as my boss got his tentacles on me, I'd be in major shit. Enough time and fuel had been wasted to end up nowhere near the last delivery or the depot, so there was no reason for me not to get drunk. All because what seemed to me as a solid promise wasn't even a second thought from Uko. I meant nothing to him, was nothing to him. And the worst part was I could even blame him. It was my fault, trying to turn a sly encounter into a lasting relationship. I considered my response, sending a snarky message, or even showing him what he'd missed. But what would be the point? Stuck somewhere between unrequited and unfulfilled, Uko was the story of my love life over and over again. Never fulfilling enough to gain any real satisfaction, but never unrequited enough to be able to just let it go. My scalp suddenly itched, probably from this cup of orange engine fuel, which on second thought maybe wasn't fit for Homo sapien consumption. My fingers dug through the thick black curls in my head, cursing the fact that I had kept any hair at all. But the thought of shaving all off frightened me. Perhaps the fear that someone from my distant past wouldn't recognize me if I did it. I shook my head at how ridiculous that was and caught the itch. Finally came the soothing sensation of nail on skin. Where was he, my rescuer, the one who would fight through life with me, make the pain of the past dissipate into mere atoms? Out in the din of unfamiliar languages came a shriek at the other end of the bar, followed by the sound of something wet and heavy hitting the floor. I tried to ignore it. Normally, I'd love to watch a good hetero fight, or even join in, but I couldn't enjoy the spectacle in this depressed state. I cracked my neck, the closest thing to satisfaction I get now, and it shot through me like a syringe full of Cree. Maybe there would be some of the bright blue jug in this station. I brought my wrist halfway up, thinking about searching for a vial, and ordered another drink by accident from the infraceptor. On second thought, cream my own was no fun. Without an orgy to go to, all that nano-induced energy just went to waste. The bar bot refilled my glass, and I knocked back the extra drink. I tried to stand, drunk again. This time, I pushed myself against the bar and I made it all the way up. Shit, guess I'd be using this room after all. I stumbled along to the exit, almost holding it together. It was so much easier to fly drunk than walk. I glanced over to check out the fight's aftermath. A gaggle of blobby and tentacled heteros were huddled around whichever one of them had gotten injured. I couldn't figure out if it had lost a vital appendage. It seemed like they were trying to scoop a blob off the floor and reattach it. Seriously, what was the deal with losing one glutinous blob if your entire body was literally glutinous blobs? I didn't know if they were crying or laughing, damn heterosapiens. Something beeped, another message. In the hazy moment before my eyes adjusted, a spark twitched in my trousers. Perhaps this trip wouldn't go to waste. Alice, get your scrawny black ass back to the depot nows. I got some jobs for you. Java still hadn't learned how to use plurals. My boss, the dumb fuck tentacled dick. How did he even know my skin was black if his globby ass eyes had sniffers for eyes? There were certain places his type couldn't even set a blob in, let alone order around a homo. Us skin bags might dominate most of the galaxy, but out here in the outer verge it was cold, hard quality. Part of me wanted to hit back at Javert. I reminded myself I'd come to the outer verge to get far away from that sort of oppression. Any sort of oppression. Plus, I wasn't exactly captain of the week. My last job dropped my punctuality rating down to less than 50%, well below the firing threshold. The truth was, I didn't want to go back. I was done, beyond done. I couldn't take another yelling from him or another job basically smuggling contraband. Java didn't even pretend the planetary import licenses had anything to do with the cargo anymore. He didn't care about the moments of terror I faced while bribing or blagging my way through another delivery. The free trading worlds of the Verge were his opportunity to sell anything and everything that would bring a profit. A sudden stab of pain hit my lower back, the muscle memory of my last delivery gone wrong. 24 hours chained up to a wall in a customs prison on Kerjan. All for what? Another planet, another lonely bar, another fruitless search for satisfaction in this lost edge of sentience. Another message. Get back to nows. The elevator took me to the right corridor. My hands ran along either side of the fluorescent lit wall, steadying myself while avoiding condensation drips from the ceiling. I tried to figure out how long I might reasonably expect to live if I decided just to fuck it and run. The room had a chill, the kind you only get in deep space. I stumbled, still couldn't figure out how to get the lights on. Uko would not have been impressed anyway. Probably a good thing he never showed after all. The promise of sex was usually far better than the real thing, I'd come to learn. I pushed off my boots, seconds before collapsing, and carried out my nightly ritual. I believe in the continuity of existence, in the eternity of our people, that the glory of our past will never be forgotten, and the greatness of our future will always be remembered. O victorious one, conqueror of the universe, restore us your faithful army. O merciful one, mother of all, deliver us from exile. May your people grow strong and numerous as in the days before. May we sweep across the stars, and may tomorrow herald the coming of your dominion over all worlds. I fell into the bed, my mind full with the heavy despair of many years and the memory of many deaths, and I was the only one left alive in the galaxy who knew those words. And that was the first chapter of Siege Weapons, which Cody has very helpfully posted a link to in the chat there, and it's still available for 99 cents on Amazon, or half price, I believe, from Smashwords or direct from 9 Star Press. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that reading. Thank you for the applause, and I will pass you back to whoever is next.
I think I am next. So I am Adrian J. Smith, and I write women-loving women fiction under pretty much every genre under the sun. And I have a particular love for urban fantasy and paranormal. And so I'm going to read from my book Unbound, which is the first in a quarter life series featuring a 1/4 vampire and an ancient witch. And I'm going to read the blurb before I give a little bit of information to set up the scene. Manipulating a powerful witch isn't as easy as Faye hoped. She infiltrates Molly the witch's mysterious house under the guise of needing help and the guise of being harmless. Totally not a vampire at all. Unfortunately, Molly's secrets are difficult to discover, and she's almost as good at hiding things as Faye herself. Molly's staff are as weird as they are distrustful, but Faye begins to win Molly over. Then a mob boss discovers what Faye's after, and Faye finds herself putting her life in Molly's hands. Will secrets doom their relationship, or will they form a powerful team? So this scene I chose to read today is towards the end of the book. It does not give away spoilers, I swear. But it's one of my favorite scenes. I love creature creation, and so this has a creature in it. And it really lends to the discovery of the world that they live in. So this is book 1. Book 2 came out in December, and book 3 will be out in September. I'm in the process of writing book 4, so there's a whole lot of going on. What you need to know for this scene is Joel works for Molly. Molly's not in this scene. And Javier is kind of a go-between, get them kind of guy. He gets stuff for them. That's about all you need to know. Faye stepped into the sun, cringing and then sneezing. She hated when that happened. Rubbing her nose with the palm of her hand, she rounded the van and followed Joel, who followed Javier. Faye felt as though Joel was watching everything she did, waiting for her to break down, vamp out, and kill them. Sighing, Faye quickened her step to walk in line with him. Is everything ready? Joel asked. There was a problem, Javier answered. When is there not a problem? Joel let out a noise in the back of his throat when Javier opened the large sliding door to the warehouse. It was pitch black inside. Faye's eyes adjusted as they walked into the giant metal frame. She was sure Javier and Joel had a longer response time, so she flicked her wrist and turned all the lights on in the room. Javier jumped up and pointed at her. Off, off, he shouted. Turn them off. Faye rapidly turned off every single light and shrugged, looking at Joel for an explanation. She hadn't meant to do anything wrong, but clearly something had happened that shouldn't have. The creature we're here to pick up is allergic to fluorescent light, Joel said, annoyance lacing his tone, even though he knew Faye wouldn't have known that. Faye furrowed her brow and clenched her jaw, choosing to say nothing in response. If she did, her answer would only start an argument, and Joel had specifically asked her to play nice. Faye clenched her hand into a fist. Of all people in the warehouse, she wasn't the one who needed to keep calm. Javier turned on the flashlight he held in his hand and walked down a long row of shelves. Faye looked around as she followed, her eyesight almost as good in the dark as it was in the light. Another advantage to her tainted heritage. She watched as Joel didn't even bother looking at the empty shelves and walked straight forward with his head held high. Faye wished she could have that confidence in her own abilities, or at least that much acceptance of them. Licking her lips, she almost ran into Javier when they came to an abrupt halt. Joel looked at a large crate that was taller than he was and wider than two of him. It was going to be a tight squeeze on the ride back to the house. Faye let out a breath as Javier brought over a dolly and shoved it under one corner of the box. He leaned back and grunted as the box didn't budge an inch. "Help a fellow out?" he asked, looking at Joel. Faye gladly took a step back as Joel moved forward. Together they twisted and moved and hefted until Javier was able to lean the giant box back on the dolly and drag it toward the entrance. Shrugging, Faye followed, turning back suddenly when she heard a scraping noise behind her. She narrowed her eyes and looked down the long aisle of shelves, trying to see if there was anything out there. When she saw nothing and didn't hear the noise again, she turned back to follow the others. Faye gasped. The brightest golden eyes stared back at her. She covered her mouth and stared at the large winged creature as it stood up straight, probably for the first time in a while. It stood over 7 feet tall, stretching its wings out as best as it could in the small confines of the aisle they were standing in. Tingles ran through Faye's spine, and she tried her best to ignore them. If she vamped out, she worried the creature would come after her, thinking she was a threat. Faye calmly took as many breaths as possible, working out a way in her mind to get Joel's attention and to bring him back around. Giving up as she was too scared to yell, shout, or even whisper, Faye took a gentle step back and put her hand out in front of her with her palm out to show she meant no harm. The thing squawked. The noise was so loud, Faye couldn't help shoving her hands over her ears and crying out as the sound made her ears ring. She knelt down to the ground as it continued to reverberate, the noise itself deafening her. When it finally stopped, she looked up, hoping the damn thing was gone from her sight. Instead, one sharp-clawed foot was raised above her head, ready to smash down and crush her skull. Faye dropped to her back and rolled away, narrowly avoiding the crushing foot as it pressed down. She let out a sigh of relief and got up on her hands and knees, ready to battle. If it wasn't going to leave her alone, she might just have to wrangle it. She heard shouting from down the hall as Joel came charging in. Javier was not far behind. Joel raised something in his hands and fired, an electric stream shooting out and hitting the creature dead center in its back. The bird thing did nothing. Faye took the opportunity of its distraction to run the opposite direction and put some space between her and Big Bird, as she deemed it, although it looked nothing like Big Bird and certainly didn't have an amusing disposition. Sliding around the corner of the next break in the shelves, Faye put her back to it. She had to look. Clenching her jaw tightly, she slowly peeked around the corner to see how close Big Bird was. It wasn't anywhere near her. In fact, she didn't even see it there. Letting out a sigh of relief, she leaned against the shelving unit and put a hand to her racing heart. "That was close," she whispered. "Quite," Javier said, standing right beside her. "How did you—" "I was trying to come over this way while Joe distracted it. Guess it moves quicker than I thought." "I can even those odds." Javier's gaze locked on her and Faye shrugged. She was just trying to help after all. She was a vampire and far faster at running than any normal human. Javier said nothing and didn't move except to look down the long aisle again, shining the flashlight in his hand in that direction. Faye poked her head around as well in order to see what Javier was seeing. She wanted to be sure they weren't going to run into Big Bird anytime soon. "Maybe we should call Molly," Faye suggested. "Not yet," Javier whispered, then put a finger over his lips. "I can hear it." Faye's ears were still ringing, And when she tried to focus on the sound, she couldn't hear anything other than the echo from the screech it had already made. Faye swallowed and shook her head, wishing her hearing would go back to normal. I want you to run as quietly as possible down the next aisle and make for the door. Joel and I can handle this without you, Javier ordered. Faye was about to object, but she didn't want to tick off the man who had helped them any more than she already had. She nodded in agreement and turned to face the way Javier had pointed. Javier looked down the aisle again, and they both saw Joel as he ran, and then a flash of red and gold as Big Bird chased him. Damn it, Javier said. He flipped sides to look and see Joel as he continued. Run now! Faye pitched forward and moved with as much speed as possible in her human form. The squawking happened again, and once more Faye had to cover her ears and drop to the ground in pain. She couldn't control it. As it shunted down her neck and into her jaw and chest, it hurt so much. She could vaguely hear shouting, and when she looked up again, Joel stood in front of her with his black gun in hand. Get up, he yelled. Once she made out the words, Faye pushed up from the ground slowly, her head and ears still aching. Joel was yelling at her again, but she couldn't move any faster. The creature charged, but Joel held his line. Before Faye could knock him out of harm's way, Javier appeared and fired his own gun. Apparently, Faye had been the only one not issued a weapon. She snarled and glared. Well, she had a weapon of her own. The tingles that had been racing up and down her spine were at a breaking point. Faye tapped into them and let them race through her body. She hissed as her fangs appeared and her nails grew. She cracked her neck and stared at Big Bird as he faltered when Javier put another bullet into him. Joel looked over his shoulders and his eyes widened. Shit, he muttered. Watch out, Big Bird. I'm coming, Faye said, her voice low. Relaxing her shoulders, Faye watched its movements, figuring out the best way to hold Big Bird off while Javier and Joel did something to contain it. She was a second too late as it cawed and lifted a giant foot again. Javier ducked, but not quickly enough. It came down. Faye ran like she had never run before and beat Big Bird to the punch. She slid into position in front of Javier and raised her arm up, taking the blow. Faye hissed in both pain and anger as she shot up from the ground. She held her claws back, waiting for the right second to attack. Big Bird beat its wings, finding itself in the crossroads of aisles. Faye stepped back, ready to protect Javier from any other attacks. Without warning, Big Bird screeched and shot its large body down at Faye, its claws moving rapidly up and down in a fury. Faye was about to dive in for an attack when she heard the gunshot. Shot after shot echoed in the almost empty warehouse. Big Bird dropped to the ground, its limp body pushing up and down a few times before it finally collapsed. Faye heaved a breath and staggered backward into the nearest shelf, clutching her arm. Javier was already at Big Bird, tying him up and shouting orders to Joel. Javier ran out of Faye's sight, while Joel grabbed onto Big Bird's wings, effectively clipping him if it were to try and move. Javier came back and grabbed hold of the sharp-clawed feet. They tied Big Bird's feet together and wrapped the rope around its middle several times. Javier brought the box it had come in back over, and they shoved the creature inside. Joel nailed it shut and sat back with a sigh, closing his eyes. Faye moved for the first time since the last attack. She stumbled over to Big Bird and looked down, letting her shoulders and body relax from the pent-up tension. Her defenses fell, as did her vampiric form. She rolled her shoulders when her nails completely retracted back into her body and her teeth were once again normal-sized, running her tongue along them just to be sure. Big Bird? Joel asked. Faye gave him a quick look, and Joel bust out laughing. He held his stomach and rocked back on his heels. Oh my God, What a name, he said between giggles. I'm telling Molly that's what we're calling him. After he calmed, Joel shook his head and crooked a finger at Javier. Time to get Big Bird to his new home. And that's what I have to read for you today. I think Christina's next.
All right, I'm Christine Wright, and let me get my screen all kind of cleared off here. Sorry about that. I write very, I don't know, lighthearted, a little bit Star Trek-y kind of books. My series is Made It to the Captain. This is a little bit older series. I started this in 2012, and it followed up in 2014 with this book, and then 2016 with this one. And of course, I have so many little funny moments. I want to share them all, but I'm not going to. Okay. So again, my characters are very lighthearted. I mostly write science fiction. I also write some very dark stuff with angels and demons, as well as a few contemporary pieces. And contemporary is what I'm writing right now. So I thought, looking through all these books, it was hard to choose. I really kind of wanted to introduce you to the characters. There is a little bit of forewarning that this is their relationship start. Then it goes into they are mates and kind of an adventure. But there is MPreg in the last book. So I know you might be a little squeamish about MPreg, but give it a try. It's a little different, I think, than most MPreg. So this is the beginning of their relationship, kind of like Harry's story. It starts on the space station. I guess these space stations have kind of a reputation. So the chapter is First Mate. I'll read you the blurb. Sorry about that. Unemployment is stressful enough, but throw in the threat of being tossed out of the space station's airlock as a vagrant, and human Dell is in desperate need of employment. No job, no place to stay. Dell wants nothing more than to be back out amongst the stars, preferably as a bridge crew member. Trouble is, his dreams are bigger than his starship experience in years, and Dell finally heads to a bar to drown his frustrations. Getting drunk might not have been the smartest thing to do, as he wakes in a strange, handsome alien's bed with no memory of the night before. When that strange alien calls him mate, Dell thinks that maybe all his problems are over. He finally has a job, or does he? Quinn wants love and a family, but his duty as captain to a Zolian space cruiser leaves him little time for forging relationships. When drunk and adorable human Dell propositions him in a space bar, begging to be his first mate, Quinn hopes that maybe he can have both duty and love. Until the next morning, when the alcohol wears off and cultural barriers and misunderstandings set off a chain reaction of mayhem, mischief, and trouble that follows Dell wherever he goes. A relationship that began as a mistake may become something more, bound by love and desire, and all they must do now is survive the journey. So this is Light Years Away. Chapter 1. First Mate. This is from Dell's point of view, so he's human. The bed was warm and soft. I snuggled back into the arms embracing me inside, trying to fall back to sleep. Yesterday had been a long day of seeking work, and when I hadn't found any, I had sought solace in the space station's bar. My binge drinking explained the wave of dizziness and nausea that swept over me in the darkness. Prying my eyes slowly took a great deal of effort. What the hell had I drank last night anyway? Was it even made for human consumption? As I struggled to sit up and get my bearings without throwing up, I caught sight of the hand resting on my chest. It was a man's hand, a rather large one. There was a there was a clawed tip at the end of each long, thick finger, I noticed with some alarm. Everything about last night, after the second pint of whatever it was I sucked down, seemed a distant blur. I knew one thing for certain: even though I was an open minded, hetero, flexible kind of guy, waking up in another man's bed when you'd never been in one before was alarming, to say the least. I grasped the hand and attempted to move the arm back to its owner. The second I touched him, he grumbled from underneath the blankets, slid even closer, and tucked me neatly under his arm like I was a toy. Hey, excuse me, I mumbled from my spot at his side. Could you let go? It's early. Sleep. A deep, resonant, dragon like voice answered. When I pushed ineffectively at him again, there was movement beside me. The owner of the powerful arm emerged, and he glared at me with startling bright green eyes, the pupils only black vertical slits. My mouth gaped open. Obviously, he wasn't human, and it took me a minute to identify the alien race to which he belonged. When I did, I felt my stomach drop. He was Zolian, a humanoid race. They were incredibly strong, intelligent, cunning, and stubborn. Their faces, though very similar to humans, were more muscular along the jaw, which gave them a powerful bite, and their canine teeth elongated when they got angry. These details, plus the ability to endure great hardship and pain, made them exceptional fighters. They could often be found serving as mercenaries in someone else's war or hired for impossible missions to harsh planets. Zolians were known as the badasses of the universe, and here I was, in bed with one. I had run into their kind once before and found them to be overly sensitive and thus prone to being short-tempered. I was in a tricky spot. It was time to turn on the old Dell charm and talk my way out of the situation. Hi. Good morning. I guess we met last night at the bar. Thing is, I'm bad with names. You are? I asked as calmly as I could. The Zolian shifted his head to get a better look at me and ran a hand through his thick, pitch black hair. When he gently caressed my hand, it took all my reserve to keep still and not shriek in panic. He grinned, showing extra sharp canines. I am Captain Quinn, and you are Dell Foster, now my first mate. I thought back to the day before when I had been trolling the space station for work. I'd just completed a 6-month tour aboard a trash trawler and had been looking to move up in life. A first mate position was quite a huge step, though, from relief navigator. 21 years old was a bit young for a position in the command crew, and I didn't have any experience at all. Hell, maybe the captain had been drunk too, or knew little about humans, probably both. Did I sign the contract? I asked. For how long? Captain Quinn snorted, and his chest shook in laughter as if I made the best joke ever. We are mated for life, Dell. And yes, you and I and our witness signed the mating license. It's all legal, I assure you. Wait! First mate isn't the title of a position on your ship? It's like what? Like being married? I gasped, feeling sick. I inched away slowly, hoping he wouldn't notice. Unfortunately, he did, and he pulled me back to press against his side. His hot, panting breath was in my ear as he remarked, Married? That is a human tradition on old and new Earth, yes? What does it mean? I wriggled uncomfortably as I tried to think of an answer. I've never thought about what it means exactly. I've never planned on getting married. It means, oh, hell's bells, like a legal commitment to live together, love each other, and I guess special rights go with that. Oh, I don't know. He quietly patted my arm as he considered my explanation. He finally said, Zolian meeting Sounds the same. Once we consummate our mating, the license will be finalized and our commitment to each other will be legally recognized on every intergalactic treaty planet. Whoa, hold on, I choked. Consummate? That's sex, right? With you? Don't rip my arms off when I tell you this, but I'd like to go home now. I shoved at him and he released me. I leapt from the bed as though it were on fire and I backed all the way to the wall. I was only wearing my boxers. I snatched a small throw pillow from a nearby chair and covered myself. My supposed mate pushed back the covers and rose, his slightly alien face contorting in confusion and concern. I couldn't really tell which. He was completely naked, his bare skin a slightly milky caramel color under his arms and legs, while his chest and belly were a bit lighter. He was heavily muscled, broad-chested, and when I saw how well endowed he was, I nearly choked. I swear, even if he was only half hard, the damn thing was a fifth limb. I looked away, a little embarrassed when I felt my heart rate and breathing quicken. He straightened to his full height, which appeared to be over 7 feet, and grunted something at me. Was he talking to me in some alien tongue? I had no idea. He started to take a step towards me, but stopped. He held up one hand to calm me. He caressed his dark 5 o'clock shadow, apparently in thought. Dell, he finally said softly, as if talking to a frightened child, what's wrong? You were pleased to be offered my first mate position last night. You responded to my touch. You shared my bed. I'm confused. What has changed, my mate? I made a big mistake, obviously. I thought you were offering me a position on your ship. And the other stuff, well, I was really, really drunk. So tell me, we didn't, did we? Consummate, he growled. I could see he was getting agitated. Not yet. It was late when we boarded the ship. I just stripped you and put you to bed. Thank God, I said. I still had a chance to get out of this. I told him, okay, so we can get an annulment or whatever they are called, since this was a terrible drunken mistake. We'll just have to get the station master to rescind it. Hold up. We're on your ship? We left the space station last night, he informed me. As to your mistake, I'm sorry to inform you that we have no such provision for an annulment on Zolia. Mating is permanent, even if it is done in a shamefully drunken state. Furthermore, to enter into this legal binding contract and then to break it is bad form, little human. This angers me greatly. If we had already consummated our union, I would certainly discipline you for being so rude and audacious. I'm going to stop there. I know that we're kind of tight on time. Thank you very much. That was part of the first chapter from Light Years Away and their beginning of their friendship and eventual mating. Checking. Thank you. Yep. So where did your guys' characters come from? Where did the ideas come from?
Mine was originally fan fiction
Yay!
that I morphed into original. The main character was always my own, as was the plot. It was just the world, so I had to change the world a bit.
Right. I need to talk to you. I want to do the same thing. The question on the post was where are your most potent sources of inspiration?
I really like classic sci-fi. I read of Asimov growing up, but what I found was that I just wanted sci-fi that kind of represented me and was gay. So and like others of us who write LGBT and queer characters, I think that it's a lot of fun taking these kind of traditional sci-fi tropes and the kind of space station bar, which you wrote about so amazingly, Christine. I really loved hearing about it, and you know, putting on a kind of gay and queer twist. And certainly in the series that I've written, the Galactic Captains, it's everyone is some version of queer. There isn't kind of a heterosexual to be found,
Right.
because why, you know, who cares? So that was certainly my inspiration for it.
I guess my inspiration came from the day that we had marriage equality. I thought, well, now everyone can go and get drunk and get married and not know it in Vegas. And then all of a sudden, you know, my characters just pop in my head, and it was like, oh, but he was on a space station in a bar. So, but yeah, I think mine comes from like Star Trek. I think I mentioned, you know, I grew up with that. So my love of fun science fiction. Oh, we got a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah, we do. Just to answer that one real quick, I really like to draw from nature, particularly because I tend to stay far away from hard sci-fi, although I do have a sci-fi that I co-wrote with a gender-bending alien, which is super interesting, called Across Worlds Collision. But I like to draw from nature and just kind of like the odd things that nature can create, particularly when talking about creature creation. As for characters, I like to create complicated characters. I work in a line where I deal with a lot of emotional parts from people and just their complications. And so I like to add that in a lot in terms of the character. Okay, moving on to the next question, because I don't want to do that. How do you create, oh, it disappeared.
Is how do you create your space fantasy world? Where your ideas come from? Yeah, so my world is basically, honestly, I've been looking at my books recently because I'm trying to write book 4, so I'm trying to remember all this. But they tend to be like habitats. I mean, one planet is all forested, one planet is an ocean. So I don't know. I'm writing, and like you, I think I pull from nature. I look for the weirdest stuff I can find, and then twist it a little more and make it alien. But it's been fun. I don't know if you guys did this, but did you do any kind of like world building, like forms? Like what kind of government do they have? What kind of trash collection? What kind of so yeah,
not
stuff like
until
that.
after the first book, which was a mistake. I should have done it before the first book. It's a lot harder to go back. I also draw from mythology and just looking at not so much the popular myths, but like the unpopular ones, the ones people don't know that much about, and draw from those a lot.
I really love the world building aspect of it as well, the kind of galaxy building aspect. So my series is set in one galaxy that they're not able to travel out of yet, but that's a kind of plot point in the series, is what people are willing to sacrifice and able to kind of go beyond the place that they're from. But actually it started as this series started as world building for another novel, which is kind of set in a far future timeline, and I wanted to kind of figure out how to get there, so I kind of worked backwards and I kind of came up with this kind of journey of how they got there, and decided that was more interesting than the original idea, so just kind of wrote that, and 5 books later I'm still going on with it.
Yeah, I had the last scene in my head, the last scene of book 3. When I was writing book 1, I had the last scene already thought. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I already knew what I wanted in the very last scene and the last joke, because my book is pretty humorous. And then I think there's a question about, why do you write the genre that you do?
I write it because it's fun.
I write sci-fi because that's what I read. And I think maybe that's why a lot of us do that.
Yeah,
That's
I
what I
write sci-fi,
watch.
but also I've got a kind of a royal thriller and a contemporary kind of rom-com, and but all of them are gay in some respect, and that's kind of what I consider as my genre is just gay fiction. I think there's so many empty shelves of gay and queer fiction that just haven't been filled. So like I love all versions of queer fiction because I think there's so much that still needs to get written. So whatever that we're writing that has these aspects to it, I think is just really important for people to be able to pick up and read and find themselves in literature, because so much of the time, we're not.
I'm going to ask the next question because it's directed at the two of you. You both write sexy gay captains. Have you ever compared notes or thought about a crossover, maybe not with each other, but with other people?
I mean, I'm always open to working with others. I love that idea. I love crossing over because, universes are huge. I mean, the universe is just like tremendous. So of course you could have your part of the universe and my part kind of collide somewhere. But yeah, I mean, yes, I have worked with other writers before. It's not easy, but it is doable. Although,
I would love to
Harry,
try it.
are you actually in Glasgow right now, Harry? Is that
Yes,
where you're
yes,
from?
I am.
Yeah. So that makes it more difficult, but
Yeah, it does a little bit. It is nearly a little bit past my bedtime already. But I'm the person never collaborated with an author. I would love to try it. I get my inspiration also from reading other authors, reading other sci-fi authors,
yeah.
finding people as well, like in these sorts of panels. And there's just always so much to discover, which is what I really love about this genre in particular. And through this convention and the queer sci-fi sites, you always discover something new that people really love, and I think that's to be able to cross over with someone would be amazing. The
It'd be fun
logistics
to
of
do
it
with a
is
whole
to
bunch of
figure that.
authors.
Yeah. It'd be really fascinating. I mean, like the Marvel, the way the Marvel universe does it always fascinates me, and how you can have so much going on and contributed by so many different writers over such a long period of time. And it'd be amazing if we had something like that that was all kind of queer. So maybe the convention can try that for next year. Can try our own creating our own MCU.
That'd be cool. That'd be
Absolutely.
fun.
Yeah,
I hope Scott's listening.
Yeah, I think he is. We have time, I think, for like one more question. So Valerie says, I figured out I was queer by writing queer characters. How did your characters help you understand your own identity?
Ooh, that's a deep question.
That is a deep question.
That's a deep question. Well, I already identified as bi before I wrote this. I think more or less that my characters helped me not so much with my sexuality, but just who I was as a person. Because my character starts off and he's so brave and does so many things that I was like, well, that is coming from me. It's coming from me. So I must not be as shy and introverted as I thought it was.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I already identified as bi or pan or whatever you want to call it. Before I started writing, I've known that for a very long time. I think particularly in my Quarter Life series, because my two main characters are what I would consider pansexual. I mean, one is 275 and one is like in their mid 70s. And I'm sitting here going, why would you not try everything out? If you've been around that long, might as well. And I think their openness to sex and sexuality helped me kind of realize my own openness to it and my own openness in relationships. But in terms of personality and character, these characters have a very dark side to them. And it helped me explore what might push me to that limit and what pushes them to that limit, and how we might go from bending the ethics and the morals when we think we are the most ethical and moral person in the world. We might
Yeah.
not be, depending on what happens.
Yeah.
And for me, I think similar as well, that the kind of, you feel some new characters, or kind of some aspect or some part of yourself, your identity. I came into this game when I was 14, and just spent a very long time not finding any media, not even books, just TV or anything to connect to. There's just, other people who are from Scotland or from the UK, I think, who also, kind of feel that growing up you had kind of queer as folk in the 90s, and that was about all you got. There was nothing in school libraries, there was nothing in normal libraries, there was just nothing out there. And now we are seeing more LGBT characters in popular media, but I'm always just a little bit concerned that they can sometimes feel a little bit sanitized and a little bit straighted.
Yeah.
And one of I started actually getting into writing young adult fiction, and I'm hoping to have some young adult stuff really soon. Now, I kind of all came from watching Love, Simon, and although it was a lot of fun to watch, I was just kind of struck by this gay teenager going around apologizing to all the straight people in his life, and I was like, what on earth is going on here? Like, what message are we giving to people that you have to go and say sorry for being gay? Like, and it's a plot of a movie. It's insane. So I think there's I like the stuff that we write can help other people discover parts of themselves. So that's I think for me the kind of the best part of it, that someone reads something and it hits them in a certain way.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, I think we are done for now, but it's been so much fun to be here.